You're really going to enjoy this message. Here we're going to talk about how much is enough. Not for me, for you. How much money do you really want? We're going to be introduced to a very special friend of mine, a great speaker and quite a result-oriented guy, Paul Hutsey from Pittsburgh, Kansas. And we're going to be talking about the image maker. You are an image maker.
Now, on page 17, at the top of the page, how much is enough? Earl Nightingale said something that I love. He said, most people think they want more money than they really do, and they settle for a lot less than they could get. I think probably many of you were born with the very same idea I was, or raised with it anyway, that if you're going to earn any money, you're going to have to work really hard. Well, let me go back to what Napoleon Hill said here. He said, one idea is all that you need to achieve the success you seek. Now, he said, when riches begin to come, they're going to come so quickly and in such great abundance that one wonders where they've been hiding through all those lean years. Now, he said, this is an astounding statement, and all the more so when you take into consideration the popular belief that riches come only to those who work hard and long. When you begin to think and grow rich, you're going to observe that riches begin with a state of mind, with definiteness of purpose, with little or no hard work. He said, you and every person ought to be interested in knowing how to acquire that state of mind which will attract riches. Now, in another part, way towards the middle of the book, he reemphasizes this. He said, if you are one of those people who believe that hard work and honesty alone will bring riches, perish the thought, because it's not true. He said, riches, when they come in huge quantities, are never the result of hard work. Riches come, if they come at all, in response to definite demands based upon the application of definite principles and not by chance or lack. Now, we're talking about the definite principles. It's up to you to apply them. You want to stop and think, how can I fill a definite demand? Now, you don't have to go too far to see very poor service. These people have never gained an understanding of the law of compensation. The law of compensation is based on three very simple points. The amount of money you and I earn is always going to be in direct ratio to the need for what you do, your ability to do it, and the difficulty there will be in replacing us. Now, there very likely is a great need for what you do. You had nothing to do with that. That need was just there. Your ability to fill that need. All you have to do every day is put forth an effort to do whatever you're doing better. And as you do that, you're going to find that it'll become very difficult to replace you. There's very few pros around. A lot of people busy, but not too many doing it properly. Now, we're saying for you to get into this prosperity concept or get it into high gear, you must be specific. If you want some money, you have to be certain that you know exactly how much money you want. You see, what we're working with is our subconscious mind. Now, we've touched on that a few times. Let's take a look at it again. It's the ideas that have been programmed into our subconscious mind through repetition that is forming the conditioning that is there now. It's that conditioning that causes us to do what we do and get the results we get. If there's poverty in this area or a lack of wealth, the problem is not in what we do. The problem is in what causes us to do it. You see, the action or the behavior is an effect. Now, this is what everyone works at changing. They're working at changing effects. If you want to change a result, it's absolutely essential that you go to the cause of the problem, the primary cause. And the cause of your financial situation right now is right in here in the subconscious mind. Now, what we must do is consciously choose, think, and build an idea of the prosperity that we're looking for here in our consciousness. Then we have to get emotionally involved in that idea. Now, people without money would have a difficult time accepting this. I have never met anyone with money that had a difficult time accepting this. As a matter of fact, they know it, and that's why they have the money. Now, you're working with your subconscious mind, and you have to know exactly how much you want. Now, let's stop and think for a few minutes about money. We live in one of the richest countries in the history of the world. There's absolutely no question about that. You can work productively all of your life. Let's say for 40, 45 years. And you know, it's a strange thing, but only 1 or 2 people out of 100 at the end of their commercial career are financially independent. And yet anyone can become financially independent. And the strange thing about it is you never have to earn a lot of money to become financially independent. Very, very few people earn a lot of money. There is 0.453% of the population that are earning $100,000 a year or more. Less than 1/2 of 1% earn $100,000 a year or more. Now that's shocking to the average person's mind. Quite often in seminars we'll ask different individuals, how many people do you think? What percentage of the population? I had a young lady the other day in a seminar down in Ottawa say about 1/3. Less than 1/2 of 1%. If you go back and take a look at the number of people that are earning between $50,000 and $100,000, you're going to find it's a ridiculously low number. There's only 4.5% earning in excess of $50,000 a year. The number that go between 25 and 50 is 53%. So when you're at those cocktail parties or the neighborhood barbecue, don't believe all the stories you're hearing. Because they ain't necessarily so. Now let's think of this. Do we have anybody here that's 20 years old? 21? Andy, let me ask you a question. Do you want to stand up for a moment? Andy, how many ways, let me shake your hand first. How you doing, Andy?
Thanks,
good. I'm doing wonderful. Andy, how many ways do you think there are to earn money?
Hundreds.
Well, you know, it's written in the book that there's only 2. Just 2 ways. Now, that's a little shocking to most people. I had a young man the other day say 1 way. He was really close. There's 2 ways. One is people at work, and the other is money at work. They're the only 2 ways that you have to earn money. Do you work, Andy?
Yes, I do.
You do. Do you spend one of those each week?
Very easily.
Very easily. What we're looking at here is a $20 bill. Andy, when you got up this morning, did you sit on the side of the bed and think, I wonder if I'll get dressed today?
No, I didn't.
Just automatically got dressed, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
That's a habit. All right? That's something we do without giving any conscious thought to it. Andy, let's suppose you took one of these $20 bills and set it aside each week. Just fold it up and set it aside. And you did that for 50 weeks. You have 50 20s. How much money would you have?
$1,000.
$1,000. Now, Andy, if you did that for 50 weeks, you'd have probably formed the habit of doing it. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I would.
Habits are hard to break, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
And if you kept doing it every year for 40 years, how much would you have?
$40,000.
$40,000. That's right. That's if you just left it sitting there. However, if you found someone that really understood how to find gainful employment for that $20 bill, and you give it to them to put to work for you, then you've got two ways going for you. You're working, Andy, and so is your 20. Do you know at the end of 40 years, you wouldn't have 40,000, Andy. You know how much you'd have?
No, I don't.
What do you think you might have?
So a couple $100,000?
A couple of $100,000. If they only found gainful employment at 10%, you'd have $450,000. Yet all you've ever done is set aside $20 a week. If they found gainful employment for it at 12%, Andy, you wouldn't have $450,000, you'd have $850,000. And if they found gainful employment for this $20 bill at 14%, and there's many people around that can help you do that today, you'd have $1,520,000, Andy. And all you've ever done is set aside $20 a week. And you'd have $1.5 million working for you. Now, there's less than 0.5% of the population of your country that are earning in excess of $100,000 if you never spent the $150,000 or the $1.5 million. If you just left it sitting there, Andy, do you know that it would earn for you between $150,000 and $200,000 a year? And you'd still have your $1.5 million. I would imagine you could probably get by on that for a while, couldn't you?
If I had to.
Thanks, Andy. And all Andy's ever done is set aside $20 a week. Do you know if Andy worked on chips at McDonald's and never got promoted, he could become a millionaire? So do you see, the classical error that most people make is if you want to be a millionaire, you have to earn a lot of money. And of course, that's not true. If you want to be a millionaire, you have to have a plan to be a millionaire. And that's all you need. You just have to make up your mind you're going to become. How many of you would like to be millionaires? Be honest. Let me see a show of hands. Everybody's hands up. How about you? Would you like to be a millionaire? You know you can. All you have to do is set aside one of those each week. Give it to someone who really understands money. Now, I would be the wrong guy to give it to. If you have any doubt about this, you just ask my wife. You see, John was mentioning his goal was to earn more money than his wife could spend. I set that goal quite a while ago, and my wife said she was up to the challenge. Why aren't there more people become millionaires? Do you think it's possibly because they're not in the habit of setting one of those aside? What would you say a habit was? We said a habit was an idea that was fixed here in our subconscious mind with respect to money. Now, if there's such a small number of people make it, they must have a habit in their subconscious mind with respect to money, but I would say it's a bad habit. But you know, through conscious choice, we can form a good habit. We can renew the mind. And you only have to discipline yourself for a very, very short period of time. Now, do you know there's many people that'll tell you they can't save any money because they're in debt? Well, if you want to use that as an excuse, go ahead. But in my books, it's a poor one. You can be in debt and still put money to work for you. As a matter of fact, if there's only two ways of earning money, it would be an excellent idea to get both ways working, especially if you're in debt. Now, take a look at page 18. If you find the task of getting your financial world in good order for this exciting journey is something that you're just not able to do, I would strongly suggest that you seek professional assistance. Now, this is something that all wealthy people do. Now, let's go back and take a look here again. John, in the last lesson, encouraged you to be very honest, take stock where you're at. I'm suggesting you decide exactly where you want to go or the star that you want to hit. Now, all we need to get from here to here is a plan and then follow it. You don't have to know exactly everything you have to do, but you have to go to someone who does. I mentioned earlier that many years ago I earned in excess of $1 million in 1 year. Now I'm going to tell you something that I'm not too proud of, but it's the truth. At the end of the year, I didn't have any money. I was one of those rich people that didn't have any money. I was living fairly well, but nothing extraordinary. I didn't buy any planes or trains, or I didn't shoot off to Paris for a weekend. I wasn't in the habit of flying off to Atlantic City or Las Vegas and play on the tables. As a matter of fact, I didn't even know where it went. There were some things I wanted that I wasn't even able to afford to buy, and they weren't extraordinary things. Now, if you've always worked for let's say an average wage, you might be wondering, well, how did he do it? It wasn't difficult. There's some people here in the audience that have done exactly the same thing. Probably a number of you. And you'll say, no, it wasn't difficult. Do you know that most people have never sat down with someone that really understands money? I think if you needed an operation, you had to have your appendix removed or something, I don't think you'd talk to the guy next door unless the guy next door happened to be a very competent surgeon. I think if you needed a root canal, it'd be highly unlikely you'd talk to your druggist about it. I have mentioned earlier here on the tape that we had a bit of a catastrophe with our plumbing this morning. I didn't phone the electrician to have that repaired. Why is it we just ask anyone for advice? Why is it we just say, what do you think? The person we're asking probably doesn't. But they'll always give you an opinion. Well, we're suggesting you sit down with someone that really understands. Now, wealthy people follow the advice of financial experts. It is similar to the principle, the idea that if a person's body were sick, he or she would seek out a skilled physician for advice. Moreover, you should also keep in mind that even healthy people, if they're wise, periodically go to a doctor for a checkup. You know, I went to a doctor for a checkup here just recently. There was nothing wrong with me. And my wife says go, so I went. You know, I do everything she tells me. And he was examining me, and I thought, wonder why he wanted to be a doctor. I thought I'd hate to do this. You see, I'm a salesperson, and I love to sell. I actually pity a person that's not. Now, I know there's a lot of people that love what they do, and they probably pity the salesperson, but that's the way I think. And so, of course, I was comparing what he did with selling. And I thought I'd much rather sell. But I still went for his advice, even though there was nothing wrong with me. Now, I want you to think about this. You don't have to be sick to get better. Come down to the middle of page 18. We say it's already been brought to your attention that very few people ever develop real expertise in the area of serious financial planning. They just don't do it. Therefore, we should seek out a competent financial counselor. Now, if you are not on the road to financial independence, this is probably why. There's three categories that people generally fall into. Number one, they're in a deficit position. That means there's more going out than there is coming in. They're in debt. Number two, they're in a break-even position. Everything that comes in goes back out. Number three, they're in a surplus position. They have more coming in than what is going out. Now, you know, you could be in any one of those three positions, and it might still be wise to sit down with someone who really understands money. And you know, that takes some studying. As a matter of fact, it takes a lot of studying. It's a full-time job. It's not something you're going to do on a part-time basis. You got to be as sharp as a tack, and I'm going to suggest that you have to have the left hemisphere of your brain fairly highly developed, because it's quite a technical task. And of course, I operate from the right hemisphere of my brain. Someone once told me I was a bihemispherical paraplegic, and I'm inclined to agree with them. I just operate from about half of my brain. That's the conceptual side. The other side is kind of useless. Now, a person that's in the deficit position could form the opinion, and it would be tragic, that all they have to do is get more money coming in and that would solve their problem. However, if they're in the habit, if they've got a habit, now think of this, of spending more than they earn, would bringing in more solve their problem? No. No. Of course not. If a person was in a break-even position, if they were in the habit of spending everything they earn, would bringing in more money solve their problem? No. No. Well, maybe the person should change a habit. Maybe the person should change the way they think. Maybe they should change the source of their advice. How many of you would really like to become financially independent? Be honest. Ask yourself, do you really want to change your financial position? Now, I'm going to give you a formula that the masses use, and because they use it, they end up broke. It's a simple formula. There's nothing complicated about it. They take their income, they subtract from their income their expenses, and what is left, they save. What do you think the problem is? I beg your pardon? Nothing left. No. It costs them more to live than what they're earning. Now, here's a formula for financial freedom. I like that better than financial independence, because I'm going to tell you money will generate a respectable amount of freedom. How many of you would like to go to Paris that have never been there? How many would like to go to Rio that has never been there? How many would like to go to Madrid and never been there? All you need is a few bucks. A person should sit down and establish financial goals. They should know exactly what they want to be worth a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Without giving any thought of how they're going to get there, this is where I want to be. Then they should add to that their expenses. Do you know that most people do not even have the brain cells to figure that out properly? I might be able to, but it would probably take me a long time, and I would really be afraid that I would make a big error. This is something that has to be done by a pro. Most people are not able to even identify all the areas they spend money. Well, they may think they do, but they really don't. When they add those two together, that tells them what their income must be. Now, that doesn't change their income, but at least they've got a target to shoot at. Now, if you want to become financially independent, sit down and decide exactly what you want. Go to a real good financial counselor, a financial planner, and let them get involved in what they call a fact-finding mission. They've got forms, they've got that little chip now. I mean, there's so many ways that they can do it. Let them figure out what it costs you to live, and then you're going to know how much you have to earn. Now, here's how we change it. I want you to take the back of that little card that you've got. Take the back of that little buff card. Draw a box on it like that. Now, if you're sitting in your den, in your family room, maybe out in the backyard, go and get a pad and a paper. Just turn this off until you get it, and then put that box on it. Now take and draw a line right down the center. Now take and put 4 lines inside the box. Now above the first set of boxes, write an M. Above the last one, put an F. Put a T beside the M and a T beside the F. Put a W in the center. Now we've created a week's calendar. I like to do it a little different. Now, what we're going to do now is take and change it into mornings and afternoons. AM. Let's loosen this up a bit. You repeat this after me as you write it in. Come on. AM. AM. Oh, come on, only about a half. You're doing it. Right? What'd John say? The more you put in, the more you get out. Come on. AM. 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 No, you see, I started ahead of you, so I'm usually a millisecond ahead of the mass. All right. Now, let's take the other boxes and put in PM. Come on. PM, 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 PM. There, we all finish the same time. You learn quick. All right. Now, let's stop and look at what the average person does. They go out and they work Monday morning, Monday afternoon, Tuesday morning, Tuesday afternoon, Wednesday morning, Wednesday afternoon, Thursday morning, Thursday afternoon, Friday morning, Friday afternoon, and they earn, let's say, $35,000 a year, and they give it all to someone else. Every cent of it. They give it to the mortgage company, they give it to the grocery store company, they give it to the leasing company, they give it to the gas station company, they give it to the dry cleaning company. They give it all away. It was their money. They worked for it, they earned it, and they didn't even keep any of it. Do you know the ancient Babylonians go way, way back? They knew exactly how to become financially independent. They were a very, very, very wealthy race of people. They said that a part of all you earn is yours to keep. And what you should do is take the first part you earn. That's yours. Now, you're going to find people say, but I couldn't afford to do that. Oh, the truth is, you can't afford not to do that. Because you see, the latter years of your life, what should actually be the worst may very well turn, or the best, may very well turn out to be the worst. Andy, $1.5 million. And all you've ever done is set aside $20 a week. Is that correct? Have you any idea, Andy, what you would be worth in a relatively short period of time if you did that? If you just said, I'm going to take what I earn between 8 a.m. and noon on Monday, and I am going to pay me that. Anyone that is prepared to make that kind of a commitment, I can assure you, can become financially independent in a relatively short period of time. Now, for many years, I traveled with John all over the place, all over the country. We would work up 200 cities in a year. And we were working with all kinds of financial institutions. And you know what really puzzled me? These people were working around money all the time, but they didn't understand it. Most of them didn't even have very much of it. It's like Bernard Baruch one time said. He said it puzzled him. People on Wall Street worked around money all their life, and yet they didn't understand it. They thought they were excited because they were earning money. The truth is they were earning the money because they got excited. There's a story of Pat and John in the Born Rich book. Pat and John are friends of mine. Here about 6 years ago, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I guess, just around this time of year, it was around the beginning of November, we got together and we sat down in the Prince Hotel. It was obvious to me that they were not a very happy couple, and they weren't. And it was obvious why. They had never sat down and taken one of these gold cards and written on it what they wanted. They were locked in that particular morning to a very negative polarity. I was locked into a very positive one. I was not about to move. And I said to them, John, what's something you really want? He thought I was being ridiculous, and he says, Pat and I'd like to have our own house. I said, then go and get it. Well, he said, we can't. Well, I said, why not? Well, he said, we haven't got any money. I said, John, you don't need any money. Now, some of you would think that's sort of a ridiculous statement. They certainly did. They said, what do you mean we don't need any money? And I said, well, you haven't made a decision to buy the house. What do you need the money for? And you know, that's why most people never make a decision to live the way they want to live, because they haven't got the money. Then the truth is they don't need the money until they make the decision to do whatever they're going to do. I said, you want to be in the house before Christmas? I took the calendar, and right across the 18th of December, I said, moving. Now, I said, you just think of how to get that house, not why you can't. I said, I'd be a poor guy to talk to from this point on, because I don't have a real spectacular record in the area of real estate. But I said, I know a lady that does. She worked at Harvey Callis Real Estate just up around the corner from the Prince Hotel in Toronto. Her name is Natalie Kopman, Natalie Wasserman now. I was just at Natalie's wedding last week. I said, Natalie, I got a couple of live ones over here for you. They want to buy a house and they haven't got any money. And I remember her saying, oh, great. But at any rate, she came around, and I said, Natalie, John and Pat have an image in here of the kind of house they want. I want you to listen carefully to them until you get the image in your mind of the kind of house they want. Go out and find it and come back and tell them how much they need to put down on that house. And I said, it'll probably turn out to be an awful lot less than what they thought. They thought it cost lots of money. They didn't know how much lots was. The very day that I had marked on their calendar, the 18th of December, they moved in to number 7 Bard's Walkway in Willowdale, Ontario. They lived in that house for a couple of years, and they sold it for a handsome profit. And the lady that bought the house is here today. Stand up for a minute, Vera. Vera Kozel bought that house. Is that correct, Vera?
Yes.
Thank you, Vera. Vera lived in it for some time, and she sold it for a respectable profit. I'm only going back 5, 6 years. The lady that bought it lived in it for a while, and on the 15th of September, my own son and his wife bought it. That's right. Is that right, Leslie? Brian, stand up for a minute. Am I right or wrong? Now, how old are you, Leslie? 23. Brian?
26.
26. I keep forgetting. All right. Reminds me how old I am. Here he is, 26 years old. Where did I say I was when I was 26? I didn't even know the war was over. I didn't. But I never had very good information running around my head. You see, that's not the first house they've bought. That's the second house they've bought. They've got the first one rented, and now they're living in the second one. And yet they're only 26 and 23. You telling me you can't make it? Here's a kid here from Burlington, Canada. The Barry Banner Advance. Little town just north of Toronto. City, not a little town at all. Overcome procrastination, earn $1 million. Earning $1 million before the age of 30 is passé. Tim Krochuk told Barry North Collegiate students how to earn it before they're 20. All you need is a winning attitude and the ability to overcome procrastination and intimidation. A 19-year-old student from Burlington, Ontario. It's a combination which has earned him a net worth of $1.5 million. An audible gasp escaped from the audience of more than 75 students at North when Krochuk revealed what he was worth. He said, there's no trick to having a winning attitude. It's all in the way you think. He said, this stuff, although it sounds really hokey, it works. This kid had his first business when he was 12 years old in grade 7. He's had 8 cents, 4 of which is still in operation. You think you can't? That kid started when he was 12. Brian and Leslie just bought their second house, 26 and 23. I was trying to figure out where to get the rent. And I'm going to tell you, on more than one occasion, I never got it, so they put a lock on the door. I'm not going to ask you how many of you that's happened to, but it's happened to me, and it happened more than once. Didn't even know how to do that. I met someone that really understands money, and I married her. And when we came back to Toronto, I said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to originate an idea, and we're going to start a company so that the people that go through the seminars will be able to have a choice of going and getting competent financial advice. And you know that thousands of people have gone through that company. Now, Linda operated that company. The first couple that went through there were getting married in 9 months. I'm going back about 8 years. One said they couldn't save money, and the other one said they couldn't save their soul. Nino, you know this couple. With a proper plan, they had enough money to put a down payment on a house and buy all the appliances for that house 9 months later when they got married. Here just recently, they sold that house, earned a handsome profit. In fact, they earned more money, profit on that house than they have earned themselves working since they started to work, and they moved into a much more beautiful house. Now, if you're not making the headway you want, for goodness sake, go get some advice. Now, you go back on page 19. And as you take a look in this book, again, if you're sitting in your family room or you're sitting out in the back porch, on page 19, write in a date that you're going to have an appointment with a competent financial planner. And go and sit down and let them help you answer the second question. The figure below is the amount of money I need to provide the things I want to live the way I choose to live.
Don't let your present financial situation deter you from going right after the thing that you really want, your goal. I want to introduce you now to a couple that I've just referred to in the seminar who thought they couldn't go after what they wanted because it would cost lots of money. But with the proper advice, they got exactly what they were after. They're a couple of very dear friends of mine, Pat and John Swan.
We met Bob early that day. I remember it very distinctly. It was at the Prince Hotel in Toronto. We were to meet him at 7 o'clock in the morning. And the whole purpose of the meeting was to find out what we really wanted. We didn't know at that point, but we knew we wanted something. And I remember meeting him, and he looked directly at John and said, "What is it you sincerely want? What do you want more than anything?" And John just looked at him and
I sat there and I thought, we'd been discussing this for a couple of hours. I sat there and I thought for a couple of minutes and I said, "Bob, I really want Pat and I and Tony to have our own house for Christmas, 1982. And this was early November. And that's what I wanted, and it scared me. We hadn't done real well financially up until that point. We were living in a basement apartment, and the idea of owning our own home before Christmas was what I really wanted. But I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know what I needed to do it. I didn't know where I was going to get the money. I had never bought a house before. I didn't know even who I had to contact as far as a lawyer or a real estate person or anybody that I needed to help me get this house.
not only that, John, we didn't even know how much money we needed. We didn't have a clue. We just thought it was astronomical, and we sort of discounted it, put it out of our minds.
And that's when Bob sat there and looked at us and he said, "Well, what you have to do is put together a plan. And with that, he reached down and he moved his coffee cup off the placemat, and he picked up this placemat. I still have it. I'm not a collector, but I still have it because it...
You got to look at this. It's great. It says the Prince Hotel down there. And
Bob turned it over, and he wrote us out a recipe of what we needed to do to get this house. And he wrote a statement on top of the placemat, and it says, decide on the amount you want to live the way you want to live, and go for it. And with that, we started into some action. Bob suggested a real estate agent that we contact and get this real estate agent to show us some houses, find out what the prices were, find out what kind of house we wanted. We had to get a picture, a clear picture of what we wanted. We had to get emotionally involved in that picture. It was something that was, it was such a big idea for us at that time. It scared us. It really made us uncomfortable. And with that, Bob laughed. You know, he really did. He said, it should make you feel uncomfortable. If it's a big enough goal, it will make you feel uncomfortable. And he grabbed my day timer that I had sitting on the table, and he opened it up until December 20th. And you can see the day timer. He put a line through the date, December 20th, 1982, and he wrote, moving into house. And that made me feel uncomfortable. After that, we closed the day timer, and he said, well, I have a real estate agent that you can call. I know of a girl that's attending the seminar that's a very good agent. So he told me to call her. And I said, okay, Bob, when we get home, I will give her a call. He said, no, call her now.
there's a quarter, go.
So I went to the phone, and I called her and made an appointment with the real estate agent. And later that afternoon, we went and looked at some homes. Within a couple of days, we found exactly the home we wanted. And then the pressure really came on, because we signed an offer on this house. The offer was accepted, and we still did not have the money to close the house deal. It was interesting. It was a lot of emotion. It was a fair amount of pressure because it was uncomfortable. And when you're doing something different than you've normally done in your past, it becomes uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable to you. But to make the story come to a beautiful ending, early November, we chose the date, December 20th, to move in the house. And at 7 o'clock, December 20th, the lawyer brought the keys to us, and we unpacked our furniture and moved into the house. That's the Pat and John story. It's a good story. It's true.
Think of how the proper advice changed the direction of John and Pat Swanton's life. In your action planner on page 19, we suggest here, I will have an appointment with a competent financial planner, write in a date, and go and get the proper advice. Most of us need help in this area. I've often openly admitted it's not an expertise that I possess. Most people don't. Do what Pat and John did. Get the proper advice in this important area. Make your decision right now before you go any further. Put a date and act on it.
We started out this morning talking about the idea or the fact that when we think in pictures. A picture can very well be called an image on the screen of the mind. Now, there's an entire chapter in Born Rich called The Image Maker. And that's what you are, and that's what I am. Let's give John a welcome. He's going to take us through the first part of The Image Maker.
Are we ready? Yes. How do you feel? Wonderful. You know, a number of years ago, I had an opportunity to work in a couple of educational institutions. And if you were to go, how many people from Mississauga? We got some people from Mississauga. You know, as you go up Highway 10, just past Eglinton, you see two big buildings on the left-hand side if you're going north. And one building is the Peel Separate School Board, and the other one is the Public School Board. And I've had an opportunity to speak in one of those beautiful buildings. And any time that I ever go there, I always speak on this subject, psycho-cybernetics. And one of the reasons I speak on it, because really, I think it's the bottom line in not just selling, but in living, period. Because Maxwell Maltz has probably put together the best piece of material that has ever been put together on this subject called psycho-cybernetics. Now, when I go to any one of those places, I will put something like our stick person on the board, and I will put the idea in the bottom part of the personality that we've been referring to, the subconscious mind. And then I will write in there, SI, and I ask them to let that represent what is called their self-image. Now, I want you to really think about this. I start off every single self-image seminar exactly the same way. And I'll say something like this. We don't have what is called a drug problem on our campuses today. Not at York University, not at the local high school, not at any school in this country. And I will deliberately walk to the podium and I will stop. And I'll pause for about 30 seconds after I make that statement. And you can see people elbowing each other or whispering to each other, wondering, where did they get this one? Because you see, that's kind of a ludicrous statement. Bob mentioned this morning that dis-ease is a symptom. The use of drugs is a symptom, behind which there lies a cause. Because we don't have, as Maltz mentioned, we don't have a drug problem, we don't have a drinking problem, we don't have a financial problem, we don't have a relationship problem, and we don't have, you could say, a productivity problem. The only problem we ever have with respect to those areas is a self-image problem. Now put your thinking cap on and examine this idea. I started off this morning and I said this. You can take anything that I'm going to say, or Bob, and you can reject it. You can do that. Or you can take the information and you can accept it. You can do that. Or you can just neglect it. And I said, don't accept, don't reject, and don't neglect what you hear. But I mentioned that only a fool would not take an idea. Kick that idea around to see if it would change, alter, and or improve the end result for a happier, healthier, more productive life. You see, if there was one thing that I ever wanted to get across to my kids or to you, is that our self-image, it sets the boundaries of performance in your life and in mine. We cannot outperform our self-image. We will never do it. Whether it's weight, and Bob will go over this in detail, whether it's income, whether it's relationships, no matter what it happens to be, our image is the governor that sets the boundaries of performance in each and every area of our life. Our image. Now think about this. I want you to imagine for a moment, I want you to go way back to when Socrates was teaching. Now Socrates taught much, but he wrote very little. Plato took what he learned from Socrates and he put it into words, and we were all the benefactors of the work of Socrates. So Socrates decided that he was going to try to use an analogy to teach people something about this governor, about this concept, about this belief system, this idea, this image of self, and how it controls all the performance in each person's life. And this is the way he was able to do it. He said, I want you to imagine all these prisoners in an underground den. He said they have been there since birth, and they're all lined up beside one another. He said they're chained at the neck, they're chained at the feet, and they're chained at the hands to one another, and they all stand in an even line. They can sit, they can stand, they can turn their head each way, they can take a step this way and a step that way, but that is the extent of it. Which is symbolic to mean that many of us stand on what is called this 50-yard line of life, afraid to go for the goal because we might miss. We don't want to go too far back because we might fail. We don't seem to understand that it's got something to do with the concept or the image we hold of us. He said, now, I want you to imagine that they have never ever laid eyes on human life because the cave is dark, they cannot see one another. Now, he said, in front of all of them, there is a big wall from which shadows are moving back and forth. And he said, from these shadows, there are voices coming as though they're coming right from the shadows directly to the prisoners in this underground den. Are you with me? Yes. Now he said, the shadows and the voices are coming from one area of the den. Way back behind these prisoners, there are people walking back and forth, unaware of the prisoners further in the den. And he said what they are people coming in from the ocean, going up through a cave, carrying treasures from their ships that they took at sea. And as they walk by a flaming fire, and as they do, their shadows bounce off the wall of the den and come back at the prisoners who are staring at the wall. And as they speak, their voices travel and they echo from the wall, so it would appear that the voices and shadows on the wall of the den to the prisoners is real. They have no knowledge of what's going on at the back. Now I want you to imagine that one day the chains break away from the one prisoner standing at the end of this line. I want you to picture that. He's standing here and the shackles fall from the prisoner. As they fall from him, he looks and he sees a light coming down from the surface of the den, coming out in the shape of an elbow directly in the area he is looking. Now, since all of us, you and I, since all of us are motivated to move in the direction of the light, in other words, every single person in this room is genetically structured to grow, to move in the direction of a light. You put a potato in a cellar, and that potato will grow in the direction of any kind of light coming through to it. Well, this prisoner spots the light and begins to move in that direction. Don't you think that as he begins to move, there would be some apprehension of some kind? Yes. And as he gets close to the light, he puts his head into that elbow and he looks up and he experiences the entire spectrum of light to the point it almost blinds him. It's overwhelming. But again, being genetically structured to continue to move in the direction of the light, he begins to climb. And don't you think as he begins to climb, he's going to feel some fear? Yes. And as he reaches the surface, he looks and he sees the sky, some clouds, the trees, and all that nature has to offer. Don't you think he would now be in a state of awe? Yes. Do you think now that what he once thought was real is not necessarily real, that maybe there was something beyond the light? Yes. That in other words, the way he was living and the results that he was getting or that he has, that suddenly now he realizes there is something more he could possibly do? Yes. And as he begins to walk around, he comes to a little lake. And he looks in and he sees an image, and he begins to run from the image. Wasn't he looking at an image of self? And as he backtracks, he stands at the den and he can hear the prisoners yell, "Return, we'll offer you rewards to tell us what you found beyond the den." Do you think he'd care for such honors? And if he did go down and tell them what he found, do you think they would believe him? And if he did go back down and he walked up, wouldn't they say, "Ah, you see, up he went, down he came. Isn't it better not to ascend at all?" You see, the real danger is you will never get from the underground den or escape from a prison unless you recognize you're in one. And many of us are like prisoners living in an underground den. And the moment that we begin to attempt to even see ourselves as we would rather, or as we could, or as we want to be, keep in mind we are forever going to be pulled, grabbed, held onto as a hostage by the prisoners in the underground den. By the prisoners in an underground den. Something quickly that I had on here and it's disappeared. Way over in Africa, they take a little beast when it's brand new. It's called an elephant. And they take this little elephant, they put a chain around its leg. And they take this 3-foot chain and they put it on a little stake and they put it in the ground. And you know, for days and days, this little guy, he begins to pull and pull against the stake and chain, but he's too weak at that time to dislodge it. He tries and he tries and he tries for days and days and days, but soon he gives up because he's too weak to pull the chain. Do you know, folks, years and years later, when this beast is fully grown, capable of pulling loaded railway cars, capable of pulling 10 times its own weight, at the end of a working day, they will take him, put the chain around his ankle, put it on that little 3-foot chain onto the stake in the ground. Something that he could pull out at a moment's notice. But he continues to hang on to that chain. He will not move. The only thing that might move the elephant is fire. He will actually stay until he starves to death. What is really holding the elephant? Conditioning? Well, you see, an elephant doesn't have a self-image. But here's the most interesting thing you can learn from what Bob is going to take you through. There isn't a person in this room that was born with a self-image. I think that in that book, one of the, I guess you could say, the greatest point of awareness, that when I read this, was one thing, that I wasn't born with a self-image. But nobody that I've ever met can explain how to alter it like Proctor can. Or like Proctor can. So at the very top of this page, which is page 21, the ideas contained in this chapter could very well be the breakthrough for you, because image making, once we get a firm grip on it, is a truly dynamic idea. Now believe me, I want to emphasize this. I don't know any one lesson or any half hour or 20 minutes that can alter or effectively alter your life like the one that you're going to experience right now. I want to suggest right at this moment that you listen to the cassette and read the chapter over a few times. I would suggest that anybody who would just take this one tape from this chapter and take the book, and if they just exercised it for an entire month, things would never be the same again. What is it Goethe, the great German philosopher, said time and time again? He said, before we can do something or anything, we must first be something. You see, the great conflict is in what you want to be versus what you want to, what you are versus what you want to be. As you are is not how you must remain. What you want to become, that's what we're working on. So before we can do something, we must first be something. Most people live and die and never fully understand the power of image making. Understand that we are relating this idea to money in this particular chapter and to other areas, as you'll see when we get into it. But I want you to know that once you fully understand the image making concept, you can effectively use it for whatever good that you desire. For whatever good that you desire. You know, the change in relationships alone will absolutely stagger you. Will absolutely stagger you. The way you feel about you, the insensitive comments that you may get, you know, they'll hit you and they'll just rebound off you like water off a fish, because you'll have an understanding now that you're in control.